Bob Ackerman. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of DataTribe, and it's my pleasure and honor to sit down with my favorite CEO and also a very good friend.
I'm going to use that against your other portfolio companies. I'm going to use that. I want it on the record.
The next one's coming in. It's the
I
same
know.
stage.
That's all right. That's all right.
But,
Favorite today.
but Rob Lee, and Rob is a legend in the operating technology security world. But Rob is also the co-founder and CEO of Dragos, and honestly a very good friend. And Rob, I appreciate you making time to share some thoughts with us today.
Yeah, of course.
And first of all, I want to congratulate you. Major milestone. The announcement of the partnership with Accenture. Just incredible level of validation. I think firmly solidifies Dragos' position as the leader in the OT security world. And we'll talk a little bit about what it was 10 years ago. But I'd love your thoughts as you reflect on this milestone.
I think my initial response is we could not have gotten here 10 years into this without the investors, partners, and folks that took us here. And as I look at the next 10 years and all the disruption and craziness and all these things happening, I couldn't have done it in exactly the same way. And so what I'm appreciative of is everyone around the room, from the board to our new partner, knowing that. If Accenture would have tried to partner with us 10 years ago, it would have worked. If DataTribe, as amazing as they are, were to say 20 years from now, hey, we can help you, it would have worked. And so we got the best of all these different worlds. And what I also am very appreciative of, and maybe this is the ego coming into it, but like this mission, and we talk about this a lot, Bob, but this mission is very unique, it's very worth doing, it's very local and national security. And when the lawyers were looking at this, I remember our outside counsel being like, this deal structure you're proposing doesn't exist. I was like, okay. They're like, no, you don't understand, like there's not a framework to follow. I was like, well, that sounds cool. That sounds fun, And they're like, well, if you get this through, it'll be called like the Dragos deal in law school. I'm like, that's what I want, And so I think there's a lot about early venture capital raising, and there's a lot about founders being psychos, about not knowing the limits, and so you're not like experienced enough to know not what to ask for, and that inexperience has brought me to a place to ask for something pretty good, and it feels good.
Well, it's funny that you talk about that, because I've always, when I was teaching at Berkeley, I always tell the class, I said, entrepreneurs are really strange beasts.
Psychos.
Because they've got to get up, prepared to jump off a cliff saying, I can fly.
Yeah.
And there needs to be that level of self-awareness in the back of their mind that says, don't forget about gravity.
Yeah.
And it's that duality, that balance, that allows you to step into, to create a market that doesn't exist. And talking about that, 10 years ago, Dragos is 10 years ago. Series A financing was done September of 2016. It was a point in time when conventional wisdom was there is no industrial security market.
Oh yeah.
And Rob Lee and his co-founders come onto the scene and say, we're here to safeguard civilization. And there's like, what, huh? What? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there have been like industrial security companies that found like a niche to serve, and they were really cool and interesting companies, both on services and on interesting products. But to your point, there was no industrial market. There was no OT market. And I remember going out, and I got out of the military, got out of the NSA. I was like, this is something that just needs done. Does it fit in any category? No, but like, screw it, it needs done. And it wasn't like, oh, I think this is gonna make a lot of money. It was just like, this needs to be done. My kids need to have lights and water when they grow up. And I remember going to Sand Hill Road, California, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to the VC world and go to Sand Hill Road. And I had 123 venture capital meetings, which I would greatly not recommend to anyone in life. And every single one of them, besides like 4, but every single one of them were, that doesn't exist. Well, these customers are so antiquated and legacy, they're not innovative. And I'm like, they're not innovative in like new technologies and things they're coming up with. And okay, well, sure. But they're not innovative, the sales cycle too long, this market can't exist, like this doesn't make sense. Have you considered talking to Facebook? It's like, what? And you're like, what about an app? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is physics. And everybody hated it. And the idea that we'd have software services in Intel, where I said, hey, we're gonna have really smart people because the best people make the best software. Like, what about the margin? I'm like, what about the outcome? Like, I'll take a better outcome with lower margin than a really crappy company that fails with great margins on paper. And everybody hated it. Like I said, there was a couple that there was a couple individual investors that I met that understood it. I would describe them as, I may have stolen this from you, but I think they were like the silverbacks of the valley. They were like the old school, kind of understood cyber enough to do the investments. And they were like, oh, this is something interesting. But their investment committees, the other partners, nobody else in the firm could get there. And it was terrible. And I remember telling the team, like, well, we're just going to do this anyways. But luckily we met DataTribe. And it was DataTribe, and it was you, and it was Mike, and it was the team. It wasn't just one investor. It was like a team of people that actually were operators and understood this. And I was like, oh, these people get us. And if you recall, we didn't have a pitch deck.
Yep.
Yeah, we walked in, we had a conversation with you, we had a conversation with Mike, and you guys were like, okay, we get it. I'm like, what? And you're like, we got this. Like, we're on top of this. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And it was very simple and very easy, very fast. And then we're off to the races.
Well, I think, it's interesting, remembering those days. We had a little bit, I think, of an unfair competitive advantage, in that our thesis had been that cyber, unlike any other area of technology, there is an offense, and the offense drives innovation in cybersecurity. So our playbook was get as close to the offense as you can and leverage that domain expertise to build defensive countermeasures. And so you, with your two co-founders, all three of you came out of the NSA. You had that offensive perspective.
We don't do offense to the NSA. We do.
You had a perspective.
We just want to listen to you.
just want to be part of the conversation.
We're the government agency to listen to. Yeah, I think.
But we had seen some of the things that you had seen in terms of offensive initiatives against critical infrastructure around the world. And our belief was, look, at some point in time, that transcends nation-state actors. It moves into the wild. It becomes an entirely new threat vector. If we're going to do something about that, we need to do it with people that understand the technology, who think like hackers, that can bring that expertise to building the defensive countermeasures.
But you guys had also founded companies and operated companies before, which I think what with what some venture capitalists and private equity folks miss is, if they're getting rated all day long on, rate of return, and they're getting rated on carry and investment multiples, they're going to enter a conversation with, here's how much money we can make. Here's what we can make at it. Here's the TAM. Look at this. If you founded a company, or you're an entrepreneur and you're really an operator, that's money follows mission. You chase mission, and you got a financial reward. That's cool. And sometimes you almost feel guilty about it, but it's like, I'm going to go do a mission. And you guys talk to us in that way. And so if you would come up to me like, we can make a lot of money in this sector, I'd be like, I don't want it. I don't need this. I'll go do nights and weekends doing consulting to, bootstrap this. But you guys are like, hey, yeah, there's a mission. So we're going to be honest to our LPs. We're going to be good stewards of this financial capital, but we get the mission. This is important to do. And that really resonated with me. And it really resonates along the way. I mean, even the Accenture discussion, they didn't start off the conversation with, look at how much money we can make. They started the conversation with, the world is changing. There's AI, there's data, energy, and infrastructure. And if you want to have either of those, you need cybersecurity. And the only cybersecurity to that really matters is OT. How do we protect the world? I'm like, okay, all right. Now we're having a conversation. Now we can do this. And so I think that was, again, credit to DataTribe in the early days on that.
So when you go back in the early days, from the very beginning, safeguarding civilization, and the mission to build a 100-year company. Talk about that.
Again, I think the inexperience is helpful, where I didn't know that's not what you did. But I was like, if this is worth doing, then we need to have something that outlives ourselves. We need to build a structure. The reason you take capital, the reason you tell customers we're doing the mission day in, day in, that I can be there for you, is because you're going to go the journey with them. And in the world of OT, we think in 30 to 50 year life cycles in our equipment. So the idea that I was going to be a 2 to 3 year vendor never made sense to start with. So as you're serving the community, actually one of my favorite things in the entirety of the infrastructure community is there's a saying, predominantly in electric, but it's transcended other sectors, of we live and work in the communities we serve. I don't want the electric bill to rise. I pay the same electric bill. I don't want the water to be unclean or unsafe. My kids drink it. It's we live and work in the communities we serve. And that mindset of we live and work in the communities we serve with 30 to 50 year life cycles creates a Dragos. And I don't think you could have had a Dragos in the financial sector, as an example. I think it had to come out of core industry of good, hardworking people that woke up every day wanting their kids and their communities to be taken care of. and not to say financiers don't have those values, but it's very obvious when you're in electric utilities and manufacturing and water infrastructure and so forth. And having that mindset with, there's bad people that want to hurt those people. You're like, what? You're like, just, let me get this straight. You want to steal some credit cards? I get it. You want to steal some personal information from the military guy? Like, I get it. You want to hurt kids? Like, you're an asshole. Like, you're a bad person.
Right.
And so these wonderful human beings that want to do community work and do service, and then a realization that there's assholes, and you can stand right in the middle and say, not today, that lends to how do we do this for as long as we can, not how do we gear towards an outcome, how do we gear towards an exit, how do I return capital. It's I'm going to be a good steward of your capital because that's part of the game. But I'm going to go make impact and outcomes that outlive myself, and that feels good.
Well, and I think that ability to borrowing from Roosevelt, right, stepping into the arena, right, and being on the field, stopping bad people from doing bad things to good people.
Assholes. Yeah, you're Dragos alumni.
There is an element of nobility to that. So, but
we'll make that T-shirt.
And if you do it well, it is remunerative, and and the market does reward you from doing important things and doing them successfully. So,
but on that point too, I think this is the other piece, and I don't want to downplay the Valley because there's so many good investors there I met over the years, even the ones that made the mistake of not investing in us. When you look at some of the mindset in the Valley, it's almost like Excel spreadsheetish of you need to do this with this ARR to burn ratio with this. It's like everyone listens like the All In podcast and copies it over and says, this is my investment thesis. And they're like, this is what you need to look like to be successful. I'm like, well, you've modeled that off of all these companies that you have that are successful. How's that innovation? How are you supposed, how do I get to an innovative state by just copying what other people did? And so when I looked at the investment side of it and looking like what everybody else wanted, I don't think it ever would have been successful. And there was so many times along the way that everyone said, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And doing the opposite of those things was the most important thing I did as the CEO. And again, going back to DataTribe, you guys were very cool, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? That path has been trodden before. It's buried with bodies. You could do it again, but here's the experience I can contribute to it. If you want to do it, at least be aware of these issues. Here's paths that are uncharted. You could try it out, and let's have a conversation. And I always felt like having a conversation more than a spreadsheet entry point was really critical to driving innovation. And you said it years ago. We were at an event, if you remember, with the governor, and you got up on stage and you talked about how Maryland had the oil. It was the cybersecurity and the analysts are coming out of NRO and NSA and CIA and all these folks. That was the resource. And if you could tap into the resource of really good people and really good humans, that was going to drive innovation, and that was what's going to make the East Coast really, really important. And so we've expanded past that in a global company and all that. But I think tapping into that early on was very critical.
Well, and I think I go back to some of the conversations we had along the way. Quite frankly, where you brought an intimate understanding of the industry and the personality of the industry that a lot of people looking at the industrial space don't have. I remember we're talking about go-to-market, and at board level conversations, and you say, no, it doesn't work that way with this group. They think differently, and you were right. And if I give us any credit, it's for knowing when to shut up and listen to you and say he understands this market, he understands the customers better than we do. Let's go with that.
Yeah, but again, we don't have to trade turns. It's almost like we're going to know each other for a long time. We're going to be friends for a long time. But there's a certain oh, all right, take care moment in this. So not to trade just pleasantries, but we wouldn't have gotten a Series A if it wasn't for y'all. So it's really obvious in hindsight, right? And you guys knew it in the beginning, don't get me wrong, but it was very obvious in hindsight now. And there's plenty of the investors along the way that were such good partners. But if we didn't take the seed capital from DataTribe, we wouldn't have got a Series A. There was nobody at that time that was thinking that way. Very luckily, you guys had connections to Energy Impact Partners. And for Energy Impact Partners, we were outside the thesis. But very fortunately, we had Samir, and you had a personal relationship to say, Samir, trust me.
This is the one.
This is it.
Yeah.
And so Samir had to go argue to the IC and the investment committee and everybody else and say, this is it. But so if you just, I guess what I'm trying to say, looking back, and I've got a long way to go still, because Dragos got another 100 years in front of it. It's just so interesting at what little butterfly effects could have disrupted it at any given point. It's wild to me about like any one different path could have really screwed this.
Well, we've been on this journey for 10 years at this point in time, including living through COVID. Talk about some of the tough times.
All of them. Yeah. No, that's a good point. So I think, well, I mean, and this is where you have to. You said the duality of an entrepreneur. Like, you have to try to really balance out. Am I committed and have conviction and I'm leading us a good path, or am I being obstinate and stubborn and being blind to the realities? And so when COVID happens, everybody in the industry was doing 40% layoffs. Yep. And that was how the boardroom conversation started. There was a board member that was like, everyone in my portfolio was doing 40% layoffs.
Yep.
Why aren't you?
I remember that meeting so concisely.
It's burned in. And if I would have went, I'm protecting all my people because I'm protecting my people and all this, I wouldn't have been living up to the CEO discussion of like trying to navigate the whole of the company. If I would have said, everyone else is doing 40%, this is the safe bet, let's do 40%, I don't think I would have been living up to my CEO job and all of that. And so I tried to navigate it, and I didn't like the conversation. I was pissed. I called you about it. I was pissed about it. But what is the right answer? Don't be so biased. Don't be obstinate. What is the right answer? And the right answer we got to was there's 4% growth that we were going to do in hiring that we should cut. And there's 4% of our current employees that are not contributing today, and we should be making a decision on it. It shouldn't be development plans and all that. We should give them really healthy severance packages. We should take care of them because they signed up for the right reasons. But they're not contributing, and this isn't the time to have that conversation. And everyone can judge how they want, but when's the last time you've been in a pandemic, like 1918 or something? Like, stop, this is different. And so to get to an 8% answer that impacted 4% of people, I thought was this is hard, this is emotional, but I'm not leaning to any one side of being, I'm going to do it, my way, Sinatra, versus like, I'm going to follow the industry. It was, this is hard. We're going to evaluate this. We're going to do this with thought process. We're going to do this with care. We're going to focus on the mission, but we're going to focus on the people. And the answer we're going to come to with a sounding board, that is the board, will be something we can live by. And at 8%, it was still massive risk. It was still the massive risk that this is not deep enough. And I remember the conversation too of like, hey, you could do 40 now or 8 now. But if you do 8 now and the answer was 40, you got to do like 70 later to catch up. Yep. And we collectively took that risk. And what ended up happening, as you remember, is all these CEOs that were told infrastructure was disconnected and don't worry and we're fine, it's air gapped or segmented, had people remoting in from home to do work. And they're like, well, hold on now. And so we were turning around inside of like 1 quarter going, well, how do we accelerate and do 30% growth? Yep. And so if we would have done 40% like everyone else, like all the guidance, we would have killed the company and missed the opportunity. If we would have done nothing, we wouldn't have been good stewards of the risk that we had. And so it was this very interesting balance. And I remember, I mean, no one ever like pats the back of the CEO that fires people. Like, it's the person that's having the hardest day is the person getting fired, not the person doing the firing, but you still feel sick. Yep. I remember like going home and crying about it. And still I had employees reaching out being like, I realized this was hard and I realized this was an interesting decision. I appreciate you doing something different. And people remember that. I've got a lot of 8-year plus employees at Dragos because we've constantly tried to be logical and thoughtful and then communicate transparently about here's what we're doing and why we're doing it. And you may not agree with me, but as a shareholder, as an employee, as a mission carer, you deserve to know why. And that process was what I took away from COVID most.
I remember too when we were having that conversation about doing the conventional wisdom's definition of prudent. Yeah. Part of that conversation then turned to, is there an area we should be doubling down? Yes. Okay, it's all great to cut and rationalize, but is there an outlier where we should say we're going to redeploy assets into that area? And I thought that was for that board, that was a very interesting conversation to take place.
It was good. It was what are going to be the leading indicators to tell us that the path is changing and we should double down. That was fantastic.
At this point in time, prior to the Accenture announcement, big partnership, you've raised, over $400 million. Yeah. So, you've given a little bit of advice to entrepreneurs, but, you've built a big company, category defining market leader. Done it by modern economics, rather efficiently.
In the SaaS apocalypse.
So, your advice to other entrepreneurs, in terms of raising capital, how to think about raising capital, picking partners, things like that.
I think capital, even in very scary markets, is cheap. And I don't mean to downplay the role of capital, but capital is cheap. Partnerships, 3 a.m. phone calls, navigating a pandemic, those things are costly. Those things are rich. And so I really would advise people against getting so excited about the dollar value and the capital. Dig into the terms, dig into who's going to be the board member and the partner on the side of the table, and dig into what have they done before, right? Or what do they want to do? If they're starting out with you, what's their investment thesis, what's their goal? I remember there'd be investors that came to us to say, hey, we want to help you build a 100-year company. We'll help you do whatever you want, including IPO. And I'm like, great, have you ever IPO'd companies before? And they're like, well, no, but I'm like, what's your last 100 companies? We took an exit here, but you'll be special. I'm like, of course I will. I'm pretty sure I understand where your IC is going. And I had opportunities, as you well know, where we could have taken a higher valuation from firms, and I would meet the CEO or the partners, and I just go, I don't think these are going to be the right partners for when things are hard. Because you are on a rocket ship, and everyone's telling you you're great, and oh my God, this is amazing, but you are going to fall. And in those moments that you're trying to build back up or re-accelerate growth or change the culture, or you made a bad hire on CRO or twice, and you're going through those moments, you're going to want people around the boardroom that have been there, have done that, have your back, and understand that it's a journey, not just, oh my gosh, something's scary, let's exit. And I think too many founders get told to chase a valuation, that the valuation doesn't even matter until you exit. This Accenture valuation that they put on us is wonderful. It's them showing what they believe the future state of this company to be. It's them showing they're invested in this market and that they want to really do it correctly. What has it impacted me and most of my employees? We're not selling out. I still have my equity. So that's cool. It's a nice little press release. It doesn't change anything. Right. And so many go, look at what I have. You have stuff on paper that's cute, but if you want to continue on the mission and do your job, that little thing along the way means almost nothing. Find the right partners. Find the right people that you're going to surround yourself that are there for the hard times. And we were very fortunate.
Well, you used one of my favorite words, culture. And when I I've always believed, as an ex-entrepreneur and then having worked with entrepreneurs, that culture is an unfair competitive advantage. And I don't think it gets nearly the credit that it deserves. And I think, looking at Dragos over the years, culture. There was always the mission. We led with mission, you led with mission, but you built a culture of people that bought into the mission, that were as committed to the mission as you were. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the resilience of the organization. And I think you can extend that to your investors as well. And I think you successfully did that with the investors behind the company. Yes. You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I heard you say it 10 years ago about culture is an unfair competitive advantage. I believed you then. I came out of the background of the military and everything. Was like the people you were with in hard times. That was everything. I believed you, and I still don't think I understood it as much as 10 years later. Going along the way, I'm like, oh my God, it really was just culture in that moment. And so I never doubted it, and it was still, so it's easy to hear, but even if you believe it, seeing it over and over again, you're like, it's really about culture, genuinely and genuinely about culture. And so, yeah, it matters in the investors too. It matters in the boardroom. It matters to be able to put those people in front of your employees.
But it's not an accident. Right? It's a result of a conscious series of decisions and a commitment to those decisions.
We had a lot of good success leads to opportunity, and then hopefully you take the opportunity correctly. There was times that we were very sexy to investors that I don't want to say that I was just petty. I want to say I was wise, but it might have just been petty. That I remember people who didn't like us in the A round or the B round that would show up in the C round and go, oh, you're pretty now. And I'd be like, well, I don't want you. You didn't like me then. I don't like you now. That's silly. And so we consciously took investors that also represented a diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. All right. So we had DataTribe, which was very much focused on kind of operators and like national security community in the East Coast. And it's not just one coast, but you know what I mean. Like there was a lot of like, let's tap into the East Coast. We took Canaan, which was very like Silicon Valley investors, which I thought brought a lot of value as well. There was EIP, Energy Impact Partners, which was made by the power companies. The LPs were the power companies. You had Coke, who was an asset owner and operator. You had National Grid, who was an asset owner and operator. You had all these people along the way that represented different viewpoints.
Everybody brought something to the party. Yeah.
They brought something to the
party.
party.
Above the capital.
And so those perspectives were very good. And then the individual board members got addicted to it. You know, I mean, Byron, Joydeep, Samir, you knew mission, you knew all these things. Everybody knew mission, don't get me wrong. But like, Byron went from, hey, I'm gonna do this with you to like, oh yeah, OT security. Samir was like, you're my charity case, but I believe in you, to like, OT security is everything. Dmitry Alberovich, good friend, love him to death. I remember him being like, this could be like 1/50th the size of CrowdStrike one day. And then he was like, this could be the size of CrowdStrike one day. And he was like, this could be bigger. It's just, these people came along with the journey, and so they were not only contributing so much, but they were so open-minded to fall in love with that mission. And yeah, that led to a lot. You know, that's something that you want to put in front of your employees. It's something you want to put in front of your customers. You want anybody wearing the Dragos shirt, anybody wearing your company shirt, to represent your values and your culture. And so it's just so important to have the board and investors be able to represent.
Well, I'll tell you, being at the 10-year celebration back in February, right?
Challenge, yeah.
It was. I got to tell you, kudos to you and your team. The energy in the room, but the commitment to mission.
Yeah.
It was like, I felt like I'm looking at the 500 Spartans, right? It's like nobody's going to get past this.
I don't know if you know this. So I had you know him very well, but I had a CFO. My first CFO was Darren, and loved him to death. He was like my number two. He was the one that fired himself. He's like, you need someone better for this next stage. And I was like, all right, I believe you. But I would have been with him for a long time. Good human being. And during we had a secondary, and I think it was our first one. And it was a secondary. It was right after all the pandemic and all these hard times, whatever. And he said, yeah, we're going to open up this secondary. We need to go try to recruit more capital to service the secondary. We're going to have like 25, 30, 40% of our employees that want to take advantage of the secondary. I was like, no, they won't. And he's like, what? No, trust me, Rob. I've been there. I've seen it and everything else. And he was right on so many things. But on this one, he's like, I promise. Like, you can say mission all day long, but they also want capital and they're going to take it out. And I was like, I bet you like less than 10% of the employees sell their equity because they're just that mission driven. And they see the opportunity. They see what other even investors don't see in terms of what this will become. But also they like ownership. They like owning portions of Dragos. I bet you $100 that we have like sub 12%. And he's like, all right. And I've got a signed $100 bill still framed on my desk by Darren because my employees didn't even want to sell their equity. And I've encouraged them, take care of yourself and your families. Like you've earned this. But just the amount of people are like, no, this is a 100-year company. Like, let's go. And like, so it's not just that mission manifests in like doing the job. Mission also manifests in a belief structure of this is worth doing. This is something special. This is something I can leave to my kids. This is something that impact reaches beyond me. This is something that like, let's go. Let's see where it goes. Like, and I am very fortunate that I am surrounded by genuinely amazing human beings. And so a lot of times I get to look really good on stage and everything else, and it's them, I used to be relevant. I used to be good. Now I just got a good team, It's a nice feeling.
Well, and the culture contributes to resilience, which is what allows you to get through the tough times. Mm-hmm. And when you ask people for that extra 10%, that they really don't have, they find a way to get it.
Consistency over time, right? I have a Fortune 100 customer, Fortune 100 prospect. Not a customer. And I was talking to them right before this, and they were choosing a competitive product. Okay. And we get on a call together because they wanted to ask me some questions about AI and all this other stuff. And I was talking to them, and they just asked me like, "Do you think we're making a good choice?" And I was like, "I don't know. What's your requirements for this?" And they told me the requirements, and I was like, "Look, man, you're doing something, so thank you." And every vendor's biased. I was like, "I don't think you're making a good choice." And I was like, "If you're really interested in these requirements, like you're right down our wheelhouse of what we're good at. And there's one other competitor that you could consider, but it wouldn't be that one, not for those requirements." And they're like, "We're going to reevaluate." And I was just asking the guy, I was like, curious why. He's like, I've known you for 10 years. You've told us when you weren't good for us. We had other requirements. You were like, yeah, you should choose elsewise. For 10 years, you've been honest to us. Why wouldn't you be honest now? We should pause and think about what we're doing. And I think that matters with customers. I think that matters with employees. I think that matters with investors. Of just be authentic.
Yeah.
Like just have a point of view and be authentic and be consistent over time, and people will believe you. If you're constantly telling them you're the best thing for them, every action you take as a CEO is the most amazing thing for them, to the investors, we're always going to get it right, everything else, like people just turn you off. I've been in front of my employees being like, I've messed up here. Like I think this is one of those situations where I don't know the right course of action. I'm going to choose this one. I can't sell this to you, but this is the best I can come up with right now, and we're going to try it out. And so authenticity with consistency over time, I think is just so core to building a long-term business.
I remember a conversation at a board meeting. You'll remember this, where we missed the quarter, and we missed the quarter because of one deal. And when you were asked what happened to the deal, your response was, "They're not ready for us yet, and I'm not going to sell them something they don't need. They'll need us eventually, and we'll get that business, but not now." And it really was about putting the customer first, building trust and confidence and integrity. And again, I think knowing the customer, there certainly is the reputation you and the company have in the marketplace.
Well, I think, look, every vendor loves themselves and pat themselves on the back, but one of the things I think we have done very well is that whole authentic thing. People don't always agree with us, but they know if we say it, we mean it, we believe it.
Yeah.
And that allows, I think, for better conversations to take place. You transfer from a vendor to a partner, and if you want to build a long-term business, you want to be a partner to people on their mission, because we're not the point.
Well, and at the point when you talk about the industrial space, the OT space, that is a partnership-driven environment. Those are long-term relationships joined at the hip for the long haul. So partnership, a culture of partnership, is the ethos of who they are and how they conduct business.
100%. I mean, and it transcends geos, right? Singapore, Australia, Saudi Arabia, it's the exact same. You go to, and again, I'm not trying to put down banks. Banks have some wonderful infrastructure too, but it's like, that's my bank. But then it's like, that's our electric system. Hey, that's our water system. That's our, there's a certain community aspect to infrastructure in a way that lends to long-term, lends to community, lends to mission, et cetera. And around the world you find the exact same ethos, and you gotta have a little bit of respect with that. Yeah. And you gotta have a little I think I'm doing something cool. I think I got a better mousetrap. Oh, I got some expertise. But you know what? You've been operating this substation for 50 years. I'm a guest in your house. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of expertise that I've got, and if it's valuable to you, great. And if it's not, let me not come in and make a mess in your home. And I think that mentality carries people well in this infrastructure community.
Well, let's pivot on that. You go back 10 years ago. You said there were industrial cyber companies, but there was not an industrial cyber market per se. We would have these conversations when we were doing the seed, we're doing the Series A, and people would say, "What's the TAM?" And your description was always electric, water, critical infrastructure, physics. That's, I can't put a number on it, but that's the TAM.
Yeah.
But if you 10 years later, obviously people now talk about the industrial cybersecurity marketplace. Dragos is the leader in that market. Where are we on our journey? How have we just scratched the surface, or are we at saturation? Where are we from a market maturity perspective?
If you look at what every national leader, board member, CEO cares about, it is the reason that they're in business, which is the operations they conduct, generating and transmitting electricity, creating manufactured products, all of that is the reason they exist. IT and all of what information technology has done has enabled that business. But the reason you are in business is OT. And if you look at how security has been framed over the years, we've talked about enterprise IT risk. And most national level leaders, board members, and CEOs never realized that enterprise IT did not represent the enterprise. And so for them to find out that 95% of the budget for cyber risk has been spent on the non-revenue generating portion of the business, the non-local impact of the business, is terrifying. And so at an executive level, even ahead of the security community, there's a lot of really good CISOs and CIOs, but they came up through help desk, they came up through IT, they've never been at the plant. This is very new to them. But CEOs and CFOs and others and COOs have come up through that world and they're going, what do you mean you didn't care about the plant? What do you mean you didn't care about the substations? So for them to realize they're doing 5% on it has been an awakening for them. Then if you look at what's been done there, it's all been preventative. Patch, password, firewalls, segmentation, keep it away from IT. Which you can't have a keep it away from IT and a digital innovation revolution. You can't have keep it away from IT and an AI revolution. You can't have any of that. They don't go together. You have an air gap and an AI strategy, And so what has actually happened is sub 10% of the world's infrastructure is actively and currently being monitored and protected. And when you look at that, you go, Dragos is a category leader, and this is all great and wonderful. And I'm going, yeah, cool. The prologue has been done, and we are entering chapter 1 now. Like, that's what this looks like. And I think as we look at what infrastructure really represents in our modern world, and the realities that if we're going to do anything with AI or whatever, you're going to have energy, you have manufacturing, you have data centers. The need for connected infrastructure has never been greater, and it already wasn't getting serviced. I'm not having conversations about, is the market saturated, what do we do next? I'm having conversations about how do we accelerate to meet this market and mission moment and go even faster because the world needs us to. And so I think we're at the 5 to 10% starting line.
Well, I think, going back to Dimitri's comment about this could be as big as CrowdStrike. No, this could be bigger than CrowdStrike because the world of physics.
I don't want to compete with George, but
it's great company to be in.
Yeah. I think George would be like, Rob, I think I remember you once. Thanks, man. We live in different worlds, yeah. But I do believe that the importance and the criticality of what we do is as relevant, and therefore I think markets are undervaluing it. I asked the Accenture folks this, and I hope they don't mind me sharing this, but the financial outcome for our investors was very good, and they treated them with respect to say we're gonna pay you what we believe you feel you're owed, with the multiples that you understand that this is special, regardless of what the ups and downs of the markets are today. Like, we're showing you respect. It was almost like we're showing you respect in this. But I did ask the Accenture deal side of that. I was like, there's always a financial loser in a deal. Who do you actually think it is? And they're like, your investors. Like, when we look at where this is going over the next 5 to 7 years, and we look at the size that this is going against the market and everything else, we're getting a great deal. And I also think there's something in that with like early stage venture capitalists, and you guys didn't fall into this trap, but a lot of early stage venture capitalists I talk to is like, what's the carry of this fund? What's the size of this company now? What's the TAM? What can I get in 7 years? And I remember we've had folks that were like around the room as like observers, like Jeff, who, as he looked at it from when he was retired, he was out of Warburg Pincus and all this stuff, he's like, I don't care about the 5 or 7 year fund. At your maximum stage and the profitability that you'll achieve, am I getting a discount for coming in now, yes or no? He was looking at like the longevity of the vehicle. And so while we talk about mission all day long, I think the investors that understand what is the maximum outcome, take some amount off for risk and time, is this a good deal or not, will always win above the market realities of the day. And I think our investors had a great outcome and deserved that. And I think Accenture is in for a wonderful treat. And I think our customers and our employees are getting to do mission. And so everybody ends up winning in this deal in a way that it was kind of fun to see.
So when you think about Dragos going forward, what does Dragos look like going forward?
One of the things that I think Accenture did really well is they studied the tapes. They saw me speaking publicly and all, so they didn't come saying, we want to buy Dragos, because I would have been like, yeah, we're not for sale. And they showed up with, we want to become your majority owner. We'll buy out the investors, but we know you're not selling Dragos. Therefore, we're happy to meet you where your terms are. And I was like, cool, I want permanence and autonomy. And they're like, what? I was like, I want permanence and autonomy. They're like, well, look at the valuation. I was like, nope, you read the tapes. You watched the tapes, permanence and autonomy. And so our board always understood mission, and I understand mission, our founders understand mission, our employees understand mission. But 100 years from now, we're all gonna be dead. How do I know that board, that CEO, those employees understand it as well? I don't. You gotta build culture and you gotta get there, but like, how do you capture that? And so even though we were a very mission-driven company, Accenture was like, well, how do you wanna capture that? I was like, I'd like to build it into the bylaws of the company. And they're like, what? I was like, I move the mission and the bylaws. So like the OT focus, Dragos as an entity, the mission focus of their community moved from an idea in the boardroom to being captured into the bylaws of the company. And so when I look at a partner that's going to understand what we care about, and I look at a vehicle for capital that's going to move our ideals and our values and our mission into the actual bylaws of the company, even like a board vote can't overrule that going forward. What I look at for Dragos going forward is a massive acceleration of what we've been doing previously, a codification of what we believed in to be something that is in the corporate entity forever, and autonomy to go prosecute the mission that regardless of the ups and downs of a market, we're going to be in the corner of the people that matter because the mission demands it in the face of threats who don't care about your market, they care about targeting people. And to restructure the company in that way to where there is no vehicle for this. People are going to go, did Accenture buy Dragos? No. Did Dragos get a private equity investor? No, that's not what this is. Did Dragos do this deal? No, it's a unique construct that hasn't existed before because this OT community deserves that. And that feels, I mean, like I don't want to try to be too egotistical, but I'm like, no, this feels good. That feels like we're rising to the moment.
And I think credit to you, your team, the board, for knowing who they were and valuing the mission. And there's some element of recapitalization taking place here, but the mission is preserved. The drive towards the mission remains intact, and Dragos is just ready for the next 90 years.
Would have never got there without the right investors around the boardroom. Wouldn't have been close. And so it's just so funny how every single component has to be perfect to get it right. But if you get it perfect, you can make history, and that's cool.
If we talk about the OT market, you talked a little bit about where we are in terms of market penetration around OT, but if you look into your crystal ball of OT, talk about what the next 5 years look like, and maybe start just to, you and I had this conversation over dinner about 10 nights ago about how come OT cyber events don't get discussed in the press. But I'm going to ask you an unfair question. What does a bad day look like in the OT world?
So there's plenty of individual bad days. And a lot of things don't get discussed in the press. I mean, we're one of the only firms that takes OT-specific incident response cases, and we have a standing policy not to talk to the media unless it's already made public. So where are you going to magically find these cases, right? And so there's a lot more happening than people realize. We went from the world where it was just intelligence agencies that could do this to in 2021 where militaries really entered the discussion, to 2024 non-state actors really entered the discussion, and in 2026 we're having real AI discussions. 5 years is an accelerated portfolio of time for all those changes for the history of industrial automation. So there's going to be a lot of chaos the next couple of years. And then irrespective of adversaries, throwing more and more automation, more and more complexity, more and more digitization, more and more AI into complex operating environments, you're going to have outages and lost life and real impact where people don't know. Was it cyber? Was it insider? Was it equipment failure? Why? What's the root cause of this? And if you don't prepare ahead of time to get to that, you don't just get magically granted that in the incident. So there's going to be a lot of things that happen. But if you take that and you go, what does a really bad day look like? It looks like being able to take major portions of infrastructure in multiple industries cross-region down at the same time. We investigated this case recently where an IT adversary broke into the Mexican government, broke into multiple government agencies. They were using AI to accelerate their operations. Fine. There's a lot of hype with AI. There's some things that are impactful. It wasn't AI hacked. It was an adversary reasonably used AI to accelerate. Cool. That adversary was an IT-focused adversary. Claude said, hey, you don't realize this, but that's a vNode interface down to the OT side of the water utility that the government operates. And OT is really important, and it's a crown jewel, and you should hack it if you want this operation to be more successful. And here's their vendors, their default security credentials, and all the things to know to get started. To take the world of IT adversaries and to have a model tell them, you should do this too, and reorient them is going to create a frequency we haven't seen before. And where most of the industry has just been patch, password, segment, keep it away from IT, that's going to fail very quickly in the face of that. They haven't done detection, response, recovery, resilience. Yep. And then you look at the fact that we have 55,000 water systems just in this country where they're below the cyber poverty line. and they're getting connected in digital, and most of them share, like I think for every about 6, they share one IT contractor, let alone security, let alone OT security. You could have a significant portion of infrastructure be taken down in a way that we're not quite sure how to recover at scale. And unfortunately, that means not only economic and national security, that means loss of life. And so the bad days we think about in OT, I think most of us bring it in. Like, that's not even the worst thing I can think of. I just, in a broad audience, I'm like, if I say how bad it really could be, none of you would even believe me. So I'm gonna like taper it back to like, here's reasonable, and the reasonable sucks. And so that's why a lot of national security leaders, like nobody calls, like no prime minister or White House person calls me up because I want to talk about cyber. They call me up because I realize how bad things can get. And when your national security leaders who are briefed well really are scared, I'm surprised other people are not as fearful as they should be in those moments.
Well, it's interesting. I note that Dragos was pulled into Glasswing by Anthropic, so a clear realization there that the implications of artificial intelligence are not limited to IT, significant OT implications as well. But I also, kind of in the spirit of strange bedfellows at one level, you're also Lieutenant Colonel Robert Lee, in the Virginia National Guard, where you're responsible for cybersecurity strategy for the U.S. government. Yeah. So this strange confluence.
Started out NSA and Air Force, left, got the tattoos, got the T-shirt, felt I was gone, and then got the phone call of like, hey, I don't think we figured this OT response thing out. We want to do something at a national level, and we could go to war with China. Could you come in? I was like, yeah, that sounds like a nice weekend job. But without conflating the two, what I will say, and maybe a bit of a pitch for the reserves and the Army Guard and similar, like you can do both. Like I don't think I'm smarter than or better than like 90% of people. I've met a couple people that I'm like, I could do it better than you, but like 90% are better than me. But at the end of the day, I'm busy as anybody. All right, I will say at least that I'm treading water as busy as anybody. And for me to have time to say, yeah, but I can still go put on a uniform and serve on the weekend, I can still do a little bit more. There's enough on the basketball court left that I can put out there. I think that's a sign to anybody else that you also could find opportunities for service, whether that's military, Peace Corps, national parks, volunteering at a school. Like, don't get so consumed with being an entrepreneur. Don't get so consumed with your own personal mission that you forget that others have their mission and that you have opportunities for service. And I think it makes you a better person. I don't want to like put anybody down. I think it makes you a better person to find opportunities of whatever it is to do service to your community beyond your own personal mission.
Well, I think it's a great example of expertise from industry being able to have a material, tangible, positive impact on the security of our nation. Because, quite frankly, we can't afford to get it wrong. Yeah. And so we need the best and the brightest to find a way to contribute at every level and at every opportunity.
And the thing I appreciate about the U.S. military side of it, regardless of anybody's opinions or otherwise, is everything I'm doing, all of my leadership up, straight to the Pentagon has been, hey, go share it. If you want to go talk to the Singaporeans about what we're doing, do it. You want to go talk to the Australians about what we're doing, do it. Like it's literally been this protection of civilian infrastructure is unique. Whatever expertise you have in private sector, military, tell everybody. Like every 35-year-old mom deserves to go home to her 5-year-old kid, whether she's Iranian, Chinese, Russian, U.S. Just how do you protect civilians? And I really appreciate that mindset. I think that's a very mature mindset to have in terms of everybody deserves safe infrastructure.
Well, Rob, you got a busy schedule. I want to thank you. Congratulations. It's 10 years together, brother. It's been a great ride, but it's been an important ride, and it's great to see the company get the recognition that I think it's earned and it deserves. Can't wait to watch, the next 90 years as we continue to prosecute the mission. But thank you very much and congratulations.
Thanks for being along for the ride, man. Appreciate you.
Wouldn't be there without you.